Hi everyone. Today I will be answering a common question that I get regarding the knee. A common question is if I have an injury at the knee joint or if I've torn a meniscus, can I still practice Tai Chi? The answer is it really depends on the individual. And anytime you're starting with a new exercise, definitely check with your physician or your physiotherapist before you start something new. But what I can give you are some tips to help make sure that we're keeping our knee or being mindful with the knee and keeping it in the safest possible way as we practice Tai Chi. So one of the first tips is to make sure that your feet are fully grounded onto the floor. So all four corners of your feet grounding into the floor. And this is important because it allows us to have a very stable foundation, because often what happens when we are moving and doing something new is that our balance can be off. So making sure that we're rooting all four corners of the feet is just going to help us be able to be more mindful of our weight distribution and distributing the weight fully onto all four corners and not just the inside or the outside, because that can bring pressure, different variable pressures in the knee and compressing the meniscus in various ways. So trying to bring all four corners of the feet down, and how do we do that is lifting all 10 toes up. From here, grounding the big toe. And then second is ground the outer edge of the back feet. Then try to ground the little toe side and then the inner edge of the back corners of the heels of your feet. And then from there, lower the other toes down. And you should feel like there's almost like the spreading of the toes, a gripping of the toes into the floor. And then there's this suction cup that almost forms the soles of the feet. Imagine that you can draw the energy from the floor all the way up. And from there, mindfully begin to become aware that the ankles are in line underneath the knees are in line with the hips. And then everything is starting to stack. The spine begins to stack one vertebrae at a time all the way to the base of the crown of the head. So the next thing, after we have ground all four corners and we feel very stable into our feet, is begin to become aware of shifting our weight. So shifting the weight into one foot and then the other foot, noticing that there is this transition of weight that shifts into it. And then as we shift into that leg, where the leg is becoming weight bearing, can we still ensure that all four corners is still gripping and that there's no compression and there's no swaying of the knee joint, that it's still staying strong. So all the muscles around the joint is working. And from there, maybe you start to work on gentle bend in that standing leg and maybe lifting the opposite leg up, balancing. And then trying to ground and then switch sides, shift the weight to the other foot. And then mindfully begin to, again, become aware of the bone stacking, relaxing your hip, your knee joint, and gripping through all four corners of the foot, and see if you can raise the other leg. Balance there for a little bit. It doesn't have to be high. Maybe the toes are still touching. But either way, can you start to feel that everything is integrated, working, and aligned? All four corners are still rooting down. And then release, come back. So the next tip, the third tip, is to begin to change directions. And when we change directions, begin to mindfully grip through the four corners, but as well as shift the weight and also turning the foot. So when we're turning, the turn comes and is initiated by the body and not just at the foot. So not just the toe, not just the knee, rather the body is initiating this movement. And to do that, we need to shift the weight. Let's say we're turning to my left. We'll shift the weight to the right and start to feel like that right side becomes solid. It becomes light on the left side, so you're freely able to pivot that left foot. In Tai Chi, almost all the time, we will pivot through the heels, so lifting the toes, and then begin to pivot, turning the left foot, ground through that left foot, and start to feel that left side become solid. Once it becomes solid, then we can close and come back. So beginning to add the grounding, all four corners, shifting of the weight, pivoting of the foot, adding one last thing to be more mindful of if you have any knee issues at all is knee tracking, becoming aware of where the knee and the toes are. So to keep it the best possible, safest alignment into the leg or into the knee joint is to track the knee over the second or third toe of your foot. So when we are turning, we're not just, imagine if I can hold my knee steady and I'm just turning that toe and pivoting. Then it starts to strain the knee joint. So rather, I want to have my toe and my knee turn together. And then my knee, even when it's bent, knee is still tracking over the toe, ground, close. So putting all that together, so being able to root through all four corners, shift the weight, pivot through the heel of the foot. We're on the empty leg. The solid leg stays. So we never pivot onto that solid leg. Otherwise, we're twerking the knee. It puts too much strain on the knee. So pivoting through that empty leg, grounding through. So again, knee track. So check to see if the knees are tracking over the toe. Ground. Maybe we close. Feet back together. So all these things are going to be really helpful and to keep the knee joint safe. So let's bring a simple exercise sitting down, because some of the things that's most difficult is really just to begin to practice it in your body. And sometimes when we're standing, there's too many elements in it. So let's try to do it sitting down. So maybe sitting nice and tall, maybe you have to grip onto the chair, or you can just bring your hands to your thighs, whatever is comfortable. You have to use a little bit of core muscle to keep yourself up, keeping your ribs in, back is nice and long. From there, extend your right leg out as much as you can. And here you're going to be using that quad to the front of your leg to engage. And from here, flex your right toes towards your shin, or your left foot if you're doing your left. And from here, see if you can knee tracks over the toes, turn your toes out. Now turn it in. And this is just going to be assessing the range of motion. You can partly start to feel it really work on your hip. And it's going to help also lubricate that joint. So again, turning it in, turning it out a few times. And it may be very slight movement, but just to begin to understand the knee tracking over the toes, and the movement is coming from this femur bone at the hip socket and not at the ankle or at the toes, because sometimes we will want to appear like we're turning, and all that's happening is that our ankle or our foot is moving and nothing else is really engaged. So if you can, do it on the other side, and flex the foot, engage that left quad, and again, just practice slowly turning it out, maybe holding, turning it in pigeon toe, and maybe holding. Right? Just start to feel that range of motion that is available in your body. Now, one final note about practicing Tai Chi, another question that sometimes I get is, knees over the toes, is that safe or is it not safe? And it really, again, depends on the individual. As you begin to become more experienced in the practice, and the ankle becomes a little bit stronger as well as more flexible, same with the heels, same with the knees, same with the hips. Eventually, the practice, when it gets deeper, the knee does go over the toes. And as long as there's no pain, remember that we're always trying to find a practice that does not cause any pain. So anything that causes pain, definitely stop doing it, modify, or begin to go and find a physiotherapist or ask your physician if there's some underlying things that's causing you to feel pain. But definitely avoid pain. So for those who practice more, and for those who has this accessibility into going deeper where the knees is over the toes without pain, it is possible and it is okay to have that. You'll notice that over time in the practices in a horse stance position, the feet are parallel, the knees are wide as you sit back. And often for most people, when they start, especially for myself, it's very difficult to do that, because in Tai Chi, we're always asking for the spine to be tall. So when we're trying to get the spine tall, but at the same time feet parallel, and also be able to sit down in a horse stance, what normally happens is that either we start to send the knees forward and the knees go over the toes. And this is when, in the situation, knees over the toes is not going to be healthy, because all the weight is going right into our knees. So in this situation, what you want to do is relax your hips and take it back like you're sitting in a chair. And sometimes having a little seat is going to help. I bring it forward, and I take my hips, I bring it back. It's almost like I'm sitting down and trying to keep my straight spine long. If I start to round or I start to curl forward, then I've gone too far. And just being mindful. And for some, this may still be too much. What you need to look at is then possibly giving yourself a little bit more space by turning your toes out a little bit. So working the knee tracking, turning your toes out slightly, and that may help you be able to keep that spine long. So depending on the mobility of your knees and also the anatomy of your hip socket, parallel feet may be too much, and maybe it's just better just to turn the feet out a little bit. And so just a quick review of everything that we've talked about. Remembering to rooting through all four corners of the feet so you can feel grounded and stabilized so that we can begin to balance on one leg. Shifting the weight to slowly begin to feel the change of weight and finding that stability as we begin to move. And being able to turn by using the body to lead the movement and never turning on a leg that is weight bearing, rather always the opposite leg that is more free to move. And then again, shifting the weight to ground, closing it back. And always remember that this practice should never be painful. It might be a little strenuous, maybe challenging, and maybe a little difficult, but never painful. So if you ever experience any pain during your practice, definitely stop the exercise or modify as you need. Most importantly, this practice is really to begin to pair the body, the mind, and the breath together so you can build a little bit more awareness in your body. So if your body is telling you anything is going on, definitely start to listen to your body. So I hope these tips help you.